Findaro here, co-founder and managing partner at Visa Franchise. Excited to have on James Levigne. He's been practicing immigration law for many decades now, and the focus of today's conversation is on how Indians can obtain the EB-5 visa. James has worked on over 1,000 Indian petitions, not just for the EB-5, but for some other visa categories for Indian nationals. James, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Patrick. It's always my pleasure and honor to work with you in your company, which I have done in the past and continue to do so.
Definitely. I know you've had a lot of experience too with franchising, whether it's for the EB-5, L1, E2, and we appreciate the creativity that you and your law firm deploy. Because sometimes
franchising is an excellent way to do business in the United States. If you've not done business in the United States before, to me, it's one of the preferred ways of establishing a business in the U.S. is a franchise.
Exactly. Yeah. If someone's not already here or if they've never owned a business before, it's a good way to start. And then a lot of our clients will then move on to their own business or go back to being an employee or continue just to grow the franchise system.
Correct.
What are the key requirements and process for obtaining an EB-5 visa? It's December 2023, but going into 2024, what are the key requirements and what's the process like?
Okay, well, I just give you the list of the key requirements to get an EB-5 is usually $1,050,000 invested anywhere in the U.S. and the creation of 10 new jobs. Or if you do go through a regional center, you can invest $800,000 and also create 10 jobs. If it is in what we call a targeted employment area, which means we've got a high unemployment rate for that particular area, or it's a rural area, you go in at the lower rate. So that's a good thing to look at too. And like I say, your funds, where you get the money is really, really important. The USCIS requires absolute transparency, traceability. Where did you get your money? How did you make your money? Are you really qualified? In other words, do you have the background as an investor? Particularly if you have your own business, you can do okay with that. And this is something you and I both work with the investors. Where did you get your money? How did you get it? Document it. We don't want illegal money in this country. We have enough of it already. So we don't want any more of that in there. But their program is still available. In fact, it's better now for people from India than it was 6 months ago, because we're allowed to do some other things we weren't allowed until December, and it changes every month. But right now, oh boy, I got another one from India yesterday for EB-5. They're in California, but we can do it. So yeah, from India, if you're in the United States, there's one way to do it. If you're not in the United States, we do them both ways. We do every which way you can to get your
What was the big change? Is it the time invested in the business?
Is that too? You only need to keep your money in for a minimum of 2 years. It used to be 5 to 7 years. Additionally, the subscription was oversubscribed, so there was no visas available for people from India for 5 to 10 years, even an EB-5. Now, if you've invested, now it's about a 2-year wait before you can process for your immigrant visa, or about a 2-year wait before you can file your application for the green card process in the United States, called the 45. So that has much better. We're up to April 2022, whereas before we were several years behind. The good news now is that instead of 10,000 visas a year for EB-5, we have got another 6,396 EB-5 visas available from Carry Forward. And this is from the immigration or the service in a what we call question and answers, published on December the 8th, that for the next year, we're going to have over 16,000 EB-5 visas available, not 10. Good news, great news.
And for those Indian investors, like which profile makes more sense for the regional center, which is in effect a passive investment, and which one makes more sense for a direct investment where they have control?
Well, what makes more sense for people from India is to invest in either a rural area, a targeted employment area, or what we call an infrastructure area, which are all current. So not only can you can immediately file for your 485 at the same time and get started on your processing. You're just waiting for the EB-5 approval, but currently if it's approved, You're going to your interview. I just had somebody go in this week to Mumbai for their EB-5 interview. Okay, so they're trying to push it. They were slowed down, but my goodness, we've had about, I guess, 8 or 10 investors from Mumbai in the past 2 months set up for their interviews, which is great. Yeah, so this is good. But yeah, that's very important that this year.
So the key, whether it's direct or regional center, do high unemployment, rural or regional centers doing the infrastructure. It's hard to do like a direct infrastructure project unless
direct infrastructure is out of the question. I do that. I'm on a community development district, what we call in Florida, which is for infrastructure, and that one we can have that available. In fact, it was approved for $140 million in bonds by the city, and it's an infrastructure project, so we can do that. But that is through a regional center only. You can do the regional centers for the rural areas and for the targeted employment areas. And we'll know immediately pretty soon if it's a targeted employment area, which the new numbers were just published this week. So we'll know that too. So if you want to do your own EB-5 visa, sure, you can do that, rural area or high employment area. And you can still qualify for the current period. So it's current. It's not backlogged for years.
And what I see is that a lot of the regional center investors, generally a little wealthier, where maybe their net worth's 3 mil, 5 mil, where 800K is substantial, but we've had more direct folks where 800K is all they have. So they have to make more money from it and basically support their family from the business. And they'll work, whether it's 40, 50 hours a week to make good earnings from that franchise.
Well, that's the thing why somebody like your company is very important, because you have to do your due diligence. So, I mean, there are a lot of businesses available in the U.S. Some of them can qualify for one visa, E2. From India, you don't get an E2 visa. So you've got to do the L1, which is very complicated anyhow. And there's no written rules on L1s. I had some of them denied, even though they created 30 jobs. On EB-5, you create the 10, you will get it. One of my clients from India got his EB-5 approved in November, but they gave me a hard time. Well, did you create the jobs? We certainly did. And within 2 weeks of giving him that evidence, they approved him. So he's happy. I will say, Happy Harpender is who his name was.
What's the easiest way to provide proof of the job creation?
The easiest way is through the regional center, to be honest with you, because you can do it just based upon the amount of money spent and the project itself. It could be construction funds. So that's the easiest way, because you get direct job credit and indirect job credit and induced job credit. If you do your own EB-5 direct, you really got to show 10 people in the U.S. who are either U.S. citizens or have a green card or have a work permit. So that's really harder to do it the direct way.
And for the direct, you're usually showing payroll records?
Yes, I have to give the immigration the W-2 and the I-9s and the verifications, the I-9 verifications from the Department of Labor. And then I've got to show usually 2 quarters, which is 2, 3 months or 6 months of the prior year or so that you've actually had 10 people full-time working. But I mean, it's doable. And we do a lot with particularly franchises, restaurants and other franchises. You can still do it.
And in terms of the complete process for those that are already residing in India on, say, the H-1B visa, how long does it take to make the investment and then apply for the EB-5? How long does it generally take your law firm to put a petition together?
It's usually 3 to 4, 5, 6 months. It's just depending on how many sources, where they're getting the money. If you've got 10 different people lending money, it's going to take me longer. If you've got all the money yourself and you can document your bank accounts and the transfers of the funds to the U.S., we can get it in much faster. But what takes me the longest is to document how do you make your money? Where did it come from? You know, I had immigration deny an EB-5 for regional center because they got their money in Venezuela from the 1990s, but I couldn't get any, although tax returns, because of the new, socialist government. So we like to go back about 5 to 10 years of your sources of income. And usually from India, you got your tax returns, which are very good. I have those. We work with the accountants in India. They're very helpful. Most of them are chartered accountants, so they know what we're looking for. So no, we like to work with the accountants as well.
And then I imagine like the easiest would be you work at Amazon or you work at Google, you're a software engineer, you had $1 million of Amazon stock, you liquidated and use those
That's
proceeds.
much easier. Oh yeah, if you have professional credentials, H-1B, they know that you're going to make a lot more money. Okay. If you come from a rural area in India and then, you sold your property, but you know how they sell properties over there, there's a lot of cash. You can't really source
Like the
everything.
register, if it's $1 million property, I think like the registered would be like 200K, and then there's like a briefcase or whatever for the rest.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, those are issues, and we like to go over that before. To be honest with you, I like to pre-qualify you for your source of funds, okay, before you even get into a franchise, before you invest in anything. Let's do that right.
Definitely.
Okay.
And in terms of I guess going back on the personal background, like are there any things that would make someone not eligible for the EB-5, like if they overstayed a visa in the past? Any
Right.
kind
If
of
they have overstayed, we have some overstay rules. So if you've overstayed your visa by more than 6 months, you have a 3-year bar. If you've overstayed your visa by 1 year, it's a 10-year bar. But since a lot of these EB-5 visas are taking 2 to 3 years, I don't worry about the first 6 months. Okay. But as for this overstaying a year, I need to have that. And that's one of the other things. We send you a lengthy questionnaire, whatever your language is, my software has it, and it will ask you when you've been in the U.S., how long you've been in the U.S., what visas you've had, where were they issued. So we're going to go through all of this. We want to be sure before we file anything. If I see some issues that come up, we want to correct it before we file anything with immigration.
I know there's a lot of demand for Indians currently in the U.S. as well as those residing in India, Dubai, or other Indian expats around the world. Do you anticipate any further retrogression for those that are investing in a rural area or high in employment area in 2024?
No, I don't expect any retrogression in rural areas or high unemployment areas or what we call the infrastructure areas, because the last several months, and according to the announcement let out on December the 8th from USCIS, they're not expecting any retrogression in those areas. We're still having some retrogression in the unreserved fifth reserved area. Okay, for India right now, if you didn't file by April the 1st, 2022, you can't go for the 485, and you can't get going. So that was better than it was a few months ago. Okay, because typically for India, employment-based category 1 is July 1st, 2019. Employment-based second, May 2012. Employment third category, August 2012. Fourth category, March 1st, 2019. So some of these other areas are too far. It's just you're going to be 20 years. The EB-5, no, we're not expecting that in the EB-5 for the next 1 or 2 years, because like I just said, we have an oversupply now. We didn't use them.
So as I see it, I mean, the only sure bet for Indian nationals that want to get a green card in the next year is through EB-5, because even the EB-1 category is backlogged. EB-2 you mentioned, EB-3,
EB-4. They're all backlogged, and they may not get better because a lot of these people who are H-1Bs got their labor certifications approved. So that's EB-3, and they're just going year to year on that. And that could be another 20 to 30 years. And I do have a lot of professionals from India who are here on H-1B, may have had an I-140 or EB-3 approved, that are so far behind. We've gone ahead and do their EB-5, and it's faster. It really is. Okay.
And for those Indian entrepreneurs, we have some clients that one of the spouses works in tech. They want to continue working in tech, and then the other spouse wants to become an entrepreneur and maybe run a preschool or a different industry, and looking at franchises. How can they make sure that they're investing in a rural area or a high unemployment area?
Well, because I use the United States Citizenship Services. There's a database you have to go to, okay? And we work with some of the internet or the national economists in the country. In fact, they just adjusted the EB-5 targeted employment areas last week. So as long as I have an address where the project is or where the investment will be made, I can tell you if it's a target employment area. As far as rural areas, each state will have rural counties. In the state of Florida, most of our rural counties are in North Florida, not
Yeah, I saw
Miami,
Florida,
not
it's very
Tampa, not
limited.
Orlando. Yeah.
If you're focused on rural, it's probably better to go to the Mountain West or some of the Western states where there's a lot more tracts of
Yeah,
land for rural.
I have one client was doing some rural projects in Texas because all those counties were rural. But the problem with rural areas, they're more risky. Okay.
There's a reason there's
Yeah,
not many consumers buying whatever you're selling.
That's correct. And that's the issue there. Infrastructure might be a little different because usually you can have a taxing authority backing the bonds. So you get a lot more protection. Targeted employment areas may exist within a really big city. Orlando has targeted employment areas. So does Miami. So does Tampa. And so all the big
some
cities
of them are really up and coming areas. Like here in Miami, there's some target employment areas where it's becoming more of an upper middle class neighborhood, but maybe 10 years ago it was lower class, lower middle class.
That's right. And also for EB-5 target employment areas, you're allowed to use what we call contiguous census tracts. So I have one in Orlando. Even though the actual location may not qualify, it's next to several areas or high unemployment areas. Okay. There's different economic groups who need the jobs. So that's good. But no, we won't have you do something unless it could tick all the boxes.
And using an example, say there's an investor opening up a preschool that we've identified that it is in a high unemployment area. It's a ground up preschool. It's going to take 2 years to open. They've started the investment.
That's right.
When could they liquidate the preschool? At what point do they have to show that jobs have been created for 2 years?
Within the 2 years. Within the 2 years after they file the I-526 under the new statute, the Integrity Reform Act. So you only have to maintain it for those 2 years. I'm a little bit more cautious. I might want you to maintain the investment for at least 3 years. Okay. And you have time to get up to the 10 employees. You have up to 2 years from the time actually that the immigration approves your I-526. So you've even got longer. So, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get up to the number of employees you need. I like preschools. I've done a lot of them, different categories.
Yeah, because it's usually 20 plus employees. If it's a 200 student school, you're going to have a lot of employees.
Yeah, you got a surplus. So you might. Yeah, well, the problem we have with direct investments is you cannot pool two investors. So on direct investments, there's no pooling of put 2 or 3 investors together. We used to be able to do that until March of 2022. Okay.
So that so the different investors get the immigration benefit, but could they partner with an American where they're 50-50 in a preschool?
Sure can. And if we use like one of my former partners and I started one of the first regional centers in the state of Florida. So he has a statewide regional center. So he can be the affiliated regional center that we can use. And
you're able to count more jobs.
You got it. That's right. So his name is Marty, and Marty is going to have a Zoom with me at 1 o'clock today with my other partner, Carlos, who does a lot of development, who goes to South America, Central America. And Carlos is going to India next month to meet with a number of, actually from judges from India and lawyers in India. So, and we have another paralegal who is a lawyer from Canada, but he's a native of India. And one of our other persons that we work with on due diligence and all that is also from India. They're back and forth to India every other month. So we stay on top of that.
What are you talked about, be cautious. There are some great rural investment opportunities, but it's just there's you need to be a little more diligent with those opportunities. Can you any other recommendations in terms of?
Well, the ones that I've been looking at lately for rural opportunities are probably usually subdivisions that you can take advantage or in a rural area, and they do build the homes. So when the homes are sold, pretty much at some point you will get your money back. And there have been some very successful ones for rural areas that I know in Georgia, for example, South Georgia, not necessarily Atlanta, but yeah, there are some. I will say that there are. But like I say, rural areas, yeah, has its own unique set of issues.
And then in general, any considerations focusing more on the direct side in terms of how to properly structure it, make sure that job creation is properly tracked, and so that there's not issues when the removal of condition.
Correct. We are very careful to give you the information you need up front of how to track jobs, the job creation. We usually like to have a very good business plan, and we work with you. And I think Journey Business Plans is a lot for us too that you work with. And so we'll have that in there. But then at the end of the day, if you're direct, I just got to have the proof of your pay stubs, paychecks, what we call a W-2, which is your income tax withholding form. An I-9 means that they're eligible to work. And you got to show that you've been paying them and that they have 35 hours a week is all we have to prove per employee. So it's a little bit more proof, but for some people, if you've been doing your own job in business for years and you don't want to rely on somebody else making you your money because you're going to work hard and you like what you're doing, do the EB-5 direct. That's fine too. But then have a good business to get into.
How about the cases where they're going to create the job, say for like a $300K investment in a staffing business, there's going to be 20 plus W-2 jobs, but there's not the need for 800K of capital in a high unemployment area. Could they buy the building? Could they invest in another business?
If they could invest in another business, if they do the $1,050,000, then you don't have the targeted employment area issue, because if it's a targeted employment area, you can only invest in the business in that particular TEA. So if you're going to do it that way, we will set up like a parent or a holding company to have subsidiaries that you own, and there's a job creating entity, and and the newly created entity. We have the job. So you that somebody coming from India, but they need more capital than just the 800,000. You can borrow money, or you can have other investors who are not EB-5 who will put up more money too. I work with people on doing that too.
And how does it work where it's been, 4 years or whatever amount of years, and you're going to take the conditions off and you didn't create the jobs? Do you have a setback, or is it, sorry, you've got to start the whole process over where you've only created 8 jobs, or you invested in a regional center and
actually,
they didn't have the proper job count?
Yeah. When you're in the United States with an approved I-5 section, you actually have your green card either through the visa process or in the U.S. There's a form called an I-829 application to make your 2-year green card really the 10-year permanent card. And in that process is when you show you created the jobs. And you don't even file for that until within 2 years after you get your first green card. So you've got the 2 years, and they do give us that opportunity to do it. And here's the kicker. Even if you don't have the 10 people working, if I can show that within a reasonable amount of time you're going to have the 10 people working, you will still get your 10-year green card. I've had that happen. I was surprised, but I did.
So I mean, with your breadth of knowledge, it's going to be case by case. And if they are in a situation where, there's been another economic crisis, they've dipped down below 10, then it's going to, there's usually a way to go around it.
Yeah, that happened a lot during COVID. I had a lot of people and clients that just actually went out of business, but some are just hanging on, but they couldn't do it. But that's everybody in the U.S. So yeah, they understand that too. So long as I can show the 10 jobs will be created within a reasonable time after you file that second application, you can still get it.
James, we've covered a lot today. And can you think of any other insights that, I guess, questions that regularly come up when you're bringing on clients for consultations or working with clients throughout the EB-5 process?
Yeah, what usually comes up is people want to offer you a guaranteed return, which we can't do. All of your investment must be at risk of total loss, or immigration will not approve it. So you have to invest at least the $1,050,000 or $800,000 in a project as capital investment. It's not a loan. So you will get confused because some regional centers have a loan model, but what you're doing is you're putting money into a company that then lends the money out to the developer or the builder. And so you get some of that money back. But you must be careful that no one can guarantee you a rate of return or that you will get your money back for sure, you're guaranteed, because then it's not a capital investment. So that's a big issue that comes up. Is it a capital investment? Is it a loan? Where did you get the money? Immigration was wrong for a few years. They said, you cannot borrow money. Well, one of my clients borrowed $1 million from his sister in Brazil. She was quite wealthy, and we put it in there. And immigration, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, guess what? Immigration got sued by a lot of people. It was a class action, and all the courts ruled against immigration. No, 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 no. You can borrow money to put into your EB-5, so long as you show the source of the borrowed funds. It could be a bank, it could be a relative, but then if it's a relative or a friend, the one I just did last month for my other client from India, oh my gosh, she borrowed the money from another investor in the same project, but he had 10 years of tax returns in the U.S. where he owns, I think, 5 or 6 or 7 pharmacies. So I had to use his returns, but that's fine. So yes, a lot of the issues that do come up is, where did you get the money, or you're borrowing the money? Okay. They might want to ask, how are you going to pay it back? And so on some of these regional centers, you can have what we call a preferred return. It's not guaranteed, but a preferred means 2.75%. If it's declared, you can get it, but it's not guaranteed. So yeah, these are things we want to look at, because a lot of times people say, I don't quite have all that money. Okay, talk to me about where you're going to get it, who you can borrow it
How
from.
about I've seen a lot of noise on social media, and I've heard of cases where people have applied for the green card, the I-526 petition, without investing the full 800K. Do you have any
That is,
experience or?
yes, you're not required to put all that $800,000 in up front. You're only required to be in the process of investing. And that means usually, it depends on the adjudicator. Sometimes say, oh, Mr. Lynn, I want all that money within a year. Others give you 2 years. Okay.
Okay.
My rule of thumb is you should really invest it all within 1 to 2 years.
Play it safe, 1 to 2 years.
Play it safe. I prefer to have it all invested, but if it's just not possible, and the thing is, you want to file the 526 with a 485 application. So if it's a current filing time, even if you haven't put in the money, if you put in 200,000, 300,000, I'll go ahead and file for you, because I'll get your receipt notice. I'll get you in front of the queue, okay? And you do have time, because they'll always send me a request, Mr. Lavigne, can you show us where he put the rest, when he put the rest of the money in?
He was in the process, and within 9 months, he invested the full
within 9 months or
800K.
a year, yes. Yeah, I only have to prove you're in the process of investing money and that you have the sources for the money available, okay? Like if you're going to sell your house or your farm or another building within a few months, and we've got something that shows that property is worth, 5 million rupees or whatever, and you're going to sell it, we'll have it. That's good. That counts. Particularly people from India. I have to go with where else they're going to get it. Can't do it immediately, but we'll get it. We will get it.
James, what's the best way for those that are interested in the EB-5 option to explore it further with your firm?
Well, usually email me, and we do offer consulting services. A lot of times I'll give you some credits consulting, because I want to pre-qualify you. I want to know as much as we can before you go with anyone. I work with a lot of other developers, regional centers, franchise companies as well, okay? And I will want to be sure we pre-qualify you. So yeah, there's a way to retain the firm. We've been at this since 1992 for EB-5, but since 1975 on all immigrant visas that we've done.
Perfect. We'll be sure to include your contact information in the description. And James, just wanted to thank you again. We had a bunch of questions come in, but I think I think you answered them throughout today's conversations. So appreciate that. And again,
throw them at me.
And again, everyone, thanks for joining. Be sure to check out our website at visafranchise.com. We've done videos with numerous franchise concepts that are eligible for the EB-5 that James can help you with everything related to the immigration petition and filing. Again, James, thanks for joining.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks to Visa Franchise.